Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and I'm back today to finish working on the Fruit Flora album, and we're going to focus on the inside of the book right now. So I'm going to get these inside liners in, and then we're going to install our pages and get the cover done, and then I'm going to call it a wrap for this album. So what I've designed for the inside is there's going to be a pocket on either side. It's going to be a large, deep pocket with a flap closure on top. So let me give you the measurements for these. So remember the book is 8.5 by 8.5 and that our internal pages are 8 by 8. So I've sort of split the difference and I've made this pocket 8. Oh, I gotta rethink that. So 8, and I already put my score lines in, so I need to add an inch. 8, 9 1/4. So it's 9 1/4, and you're gonna put 9 1/4 by 6.5. So you're going to put a 1/2 inch score line on 3 sides. So 9 1/4 across and 6.5 inches deep. So you have a 6 inch deep pocket when you're done, and you should have a finished pocket width of 8 1/4. And I am going to push it a little toward the edge of the paper, so you know from here to here is 8.5. I'm going to slide it toward the outside so that there's no interference with either page 1 or the spine itself. So I'm going to look to install it closer to this corner. And I'm going to inset it, I think, about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so that is the plan. So let's get that in. We're going to do 2 of those, so go ahead and cut both. You're going to do one for the front and one for the back cover, inside liners. Okay. And I went ahead and added flanges to 3 sides because I want it to be kind of a bulky pocket so that I can put lots of stuff inside of it. Lots of memorabilia and stuff like that. Otherwise, you could just do a flat pocket and put glue around 3 of the 4 sides if you want it to be nice and snug. But I was looking for something that would hold several items. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to stuff the pocket full of any of my leftover Ephemera journaling cards. Oops, I'm not far enough over. And I had to get my fingers off the tape. As a place to store those until I want to use them inside the album. Okay, so I'm centering from the score line here and the outside, and that is giving me about 1/8 of an inch clearance on both sides. I'm just looking to make sure it's even. There we go. So that's in. And then I've got a flap that's going to go across the top, like so. And I just noticed I've got a split on here, so I am going to set that one aside and use my second one, and I'll cut a new one for the back. And this is just going to go right on top. And I'm going to inset it about 1/8 of an inch from the top, and this will be covered. So I'm going to turn it around so I can better see the edges, get my tape off. As soon as I find my pick tool, I don't know what I did with it. I just had it. I don't know what I did with it. Well, it'll turn, oh, here it is, buried, naturally. I need like homing devices on my tools. All right. Okay, so now I'm just looking to, I just want to line this up with the edge. Just make sure I've got a nice straight line here. Okay, there we go. Now, this is a nice deep pocket, and it's fairly wide because there's a hinge on both sides. I am going to use a magnet to keep it closed. That's just my preference, but you can. This is a good place to use a bow if you want it as well. I've talked about it, but I'll remind you guys, I like to use magnets because you can put a picture over a magnet, and you can't really put a picture over a bow, and you can put one under it, but it kind of blocks your picture. So you can always dress something that's got a magnet on it, where you have to think through where your bows are going to land, or even a swing tab is going to land. in terms of where your photo placement's going to be. So I think magnets are the easiest. I don't have to think about where my photo is going to be too far ahead of time. Okay, all right. So that's in. So let's go ahead and I just realized, thinking about this, that I haven't done the inside liners yet. So I still have to pick some paper for that. I'd forgotten about that. All right. And I have plenty to choose from. I just hadn't done it. Okay, I'm gonna get some white paper out as a contrast so I can see my edges. And so can you. Okay. Okay, so it's finally stopped raining here in San Diego. And I think I mentioned in my last video that my son's going to be out of school for a couple of weeks because of the coronavirus. Well, I just heard that they're asking anybody over 65 to self-quarantine, and it's Sunday, the 14th, and they just closed all the bars. Not that that's going to impact me, but it didn't start me thinking that the restaurants might not be far behind. So yeah, that's going to be a challenge. I feel bad for everybody in the service industry. It's going to be a tough month. So my mother lives here, so I've got to give her a call and make sure, first of all, she's heard the news that she needs to self-quarantine, but also I might be needing to run around and get her some supplies. Make sure she's got plenty of water and whatnot. And my husband just got back from Texas last night, and he said they were doing a lot of the same there too, that they were getting pretty serious about locking down the hospitals and the nursing homes while he was there, which is probably a good thing, because I would imagine that people in hospitals and nursing homes are that higher risk group. So anyways, it's hard to know how long this is going to last, but it's certainly a different way of life for the time being. Okay, hopefully everybody out there is healthy and safe. So isn't that beautiful? I love that. So we're gonna do exactly the same thing on the back. And I've already pre-cut, and I'll go over the measurements again. So again, this is 9 1/4, and 2 1/2-inch hinges and a 1/2 inch on the bottom, 6 1/2 inches deep. So 9 1/4 by 6 1/2. 3 sides are going to get scored with a 1/2 inch. 3 of the 4 sides. If I can get my tape off. So, good time to stay home and craft if you can't get out and do anything else, right? All right. I'm tacking down one corner, and I like to do that and sort of pivot it into place. Actually grabbed a little sooner than I thought. There we go. Lovely. And then we have the top flap. And this is, I can't remember if I told you, it is 4 by 8 1/4. So 4 by 8 1/4, you're gonna score 1/2 inch. Is that right? Yeah. I'm questioning. Yeah, that's right. 4 by 8 1/4. And this one, I see I got a little split on the bottom, so I'm gonna cut a new one really quick. You know what? Sorry, I'm clanking around and my dog's barking in the background. Just too much going on. I'm gonna pause, go see what's going on. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. It was just my husband coming home. Okay, so I went ahead while I was away and I trimmed this down, and I'll tell you the size again. It's 4 by 8 1/4. So 4 by 8 1/4, and you're gonna score 1/2 inch, and it's gonna go right here. Okay, so visually I want this to look like it's lining up, although honestly after we get the pages in it's going to be very difficult to see, but I still like the idea. You know what I noticed is I'm actually a little bit further outside the black line on this side than I was on the other, but that's okay. You won't really be able to see both liners at the same time once the pages are in. So it just needs to be reasonable. Okay, that's in. Now we need a magnet, so let's turn it right side up again. And we're gonna get a magnet put down here, and then on the opposing side. This is 5/8 inch tape, which is just wide enough to go over the 3/8 inch magnets so that you can soften the edges. That is what I use. I think I'll do this side first. That might be a little too high. Yeah, it might be a little too high. I want to make sure that it's coming down deep enough that I don't have an issue covering it with the designer paper. So actually, I think I'll place this side first and then move this one. So there we go. Okay. Yep, it just moved down just a little bit. Okay, that's good. Now we've got, here it is. This piece goes here. Take a look at your paper. There are some words laced throughout, so they're a little bit difficult to read. But you do have to deal with some orientation. This is from the 8 by 8, by the way. Is that right? No, it's not. This is from the 12 by 12. Sorry about that. It's from the 12 by 12. I should know better because I have to use the 12 by 12s to cover anything wider than 8 inches, right? And the inside liners are wider than 8 inches. So I should have known that before I said it. So definitely from the 12 by 12 collection pack. That's that. Now we can add this piece on. And it looks like it's trimmed out and ready to go. Okay, there we have it. So there's our 2 inside liners. Okay, I'm going to check my time stamp on this because I think I'm getting, the video is getting to be kind of large. And if it is, then I'm going to separate the cover just so it's not so long. So I'll be right back in just a minute. Okay, everybody, it turns out I actually have a little bit more time to work with here. I'd only put about 15 minutes on that last video. So I went ahead and moved it, and I did run into some memory issues with one of my videos the other day, so I'm being a little bit cautious about that. But I just remember when I came to sit back down that I haven't lined this, so let's go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to fuss a little bit because I hadn't pre-planned any paper for this. Why? I don't know. Out of sight, out of mind, I suppose. So, course, we have some options, but whatever I pick, I want it to look nice with the inside. And purple is always a good choice. It's a good go-to here, but it might just be too much. That's not wide enough. So because this is 8 1/4 wide, I know I have to pull from my 12-inch stash. Otherwise I'll have too big of a gap. So, and guess what? I have a ton of purple. So I have purple and green to choose from. Oh, I got some yellow too. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. So I think what I'm gonna do is put some yellow here on this strip and then put purple on the top. Yep, that's what I'm gonna do. So let's get that measured out real quick. And what I wanna do is, okay, it looks like it's about 2 1/8. So I'm gonna go a little bit bigger than that. So I'm gonna do 2 3/8 so that when it's trimmed down, it's gonna slide slightly into the pocket. Now, because I have put those 1/2-inch gussets on either side, it would be a hinge if it was flapping, but it's a gusset. That means I can slide it into the pocket. It can be challenging, but it can be done. So let's get my pencil out, and I'm gonna mark it where I want to trim it. Okay. And I'll set the rest of my paper aside for the moment. Okay. Okay, before I go any further, I want to make sure that it's actually going to slip into the pocket. And if not, then I'm going to trim it down a little bit more. And it's pretty snug. There we go, but it does work. Now I'm going to make sure it fits in this side as well. In theory, they should be the same, but in practice, sometimes they're not. So I'm going to check both. And it feels, oh no, it's gonna work. Okay, it's pretty snug, so I'm gonna have to be careful. I'm gonna tell you a little trick when we get to it too, on how to make that work. So now we need to get the right height. Let's see, what is that? I'm gonna go ahead and overcut, and I'm gonna do 2 1/2 inches. And we'll do that twice, one for each side. It sure doesn't look big enough, but it is. Okay, 2 1/2, 2 1/2. Okay, so, and this comes from years of messing up and doing it the difficult way. I used to put glue over the whole back of this and then go really heavy on the side that needed to slide down. And it seemed kind of intuitive. I thought, yeah, I want to put a lot of glue so it's very slippery on that side. But honestly, once it's in the pocket, you don't really have to worry about it coming back out. So you really don't need glue on this side. All you really need is glue on the top side where you might get it caught on something. And believe me, it's gonna slide much easier, dry surface to dry surface. I don't know why it took me so long to figure that out, but it did. So now what I do is I make sure that I've got glue on the top third, and I don't focus on the bottom at all, so that when I'm sliding it in, it's dry paper on dry paper. The other added benefit of that is if I push it, if it had glue over the whole thing and I pushed it down too far and tried to pull it back up, I could potentially glue my pocket shut. If I didn't get all the glue back out. Anyway, so that's what I do now. I think everybody develops their own techniques over time, but that's what I do now. Okay, and as you can see, that went in pretty darn easy when it's dry. But first, we're gonna ink it. And I am gonna do pattern side up, I think, yeah. And then the top of the flap will be purple. Okay, looks like I got all the white off. Okay, this has some lettering on it, so this is the way it needs to go down. So again, I'm just gonna apply glue to the top half. The bottom half is going to be held into place by the top of the pocket, so I don't need to focus on that. And just because I told you all that, it's going to be difficult because I said it makes it easier. And that's just the way the world works, right? This is the other thing, is whenever the camera's rolling, I always have a harder time than if I'm just doing it on my own for whatever reason. It's like when somebody's standing over your shoulder and you're trying to add or spell. It just doesn't seem to work. Okay, there we go. Right, one side in, one side out. The key is trying to work fast enough before your glue dries. There we go. So you still want to stay clear of your score line up here so that it'll close easily. Okay, so I don't typically take time to miter the edges of my my score lines, so I don't usually miter these. But when I was going to tuck this in, that's what it was actually getting hung up on. So I was trying to slide it in, it was getting hung up on this. If this wasn't here, it would have gone a lot smoother. So you may want to take the time to do that. I don't do it just because it takes too long and I'm always trying to get content out. But when you're sliding something into a pocket, it is very helpful. Okay, we'll do that on this side. For the flaps, I don't think it matters because you're just, you know, on the top part here, it doesn't matter if this is mitered or not. I'm going to lay something on top of it. It's going to get covered. Okay, check for your spelling and word orientation so you've got it right side up. And you get the glue on the right side. All right, looks good. Get this a little closer to me so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. It's in. So now the nice thing about that is, even though I told you I don't trim these, now what I had just done is I laid that paper right on top of it. So that means now anytime you want to use the pocket, whatever you're putting in it isn't going to get hung up on that flange because we just covered it. So there we go. That's done. Now let's get some purple to go on the top. And then we can get our pages put in. Purple. What color purples? We definitely need a 12 by 12 because again, this is 8 1/4 inches wide. So I have this option, but I also have this option. And I think I like this better. The other one just felt a little bit busy. So let's see. If I recall correctly, this is 3 1/2 inches, but let's double check. That looks about right. I'm going to overcut a little bit so that I can trim it down if I need to. I don't know what is going on with my trimmer lately, but my paper's been buckling and I'm not been getting a straight cut. That doesn't make me happy. Okay. Okay, and it looks like think I need to trim a little more off. Because I think it's going to get stuck in the hinge, but let me double check. Yeah, that's pretty tight. We're going to go with this. Okay, we'll do that one more time for this side. I think I'm fighting my lead there. Okay, let's see how we're doing. I think it's looking pretty good, but it's a little too tall. A little too tall. We'll take off just a smidge. That's definitely enough. So in my 8.5 by 8.5 tutorial, I talk about my inserts for the pocket pages being 7 7/8 by 7 7/8. What I've decided for this album is to make them a little bit smaller. Once you get paper on both sides and then add some photos, what happens is you start taking up space in your pocket, so it starts to open and shorten, making it harder and harder to get the inserts in. So I actually decided that the inserts for this album would be 7 3/4 by 7 3/4. And I am, it's still too wide. I'm planning on putting paper on both sides of my inserts because I can. I've got enough paper. That's not always the case, but I definitely have enough paper with this album. There we go. And I just trimmed this, so I gotta put some ink on it. Trying to get it down before my glue dries. And I think I just made it. Okay, so 7 3/4 by 7 3/4. And I went ahead and put on a decorative strip on one side, or actually on both sides. And it's from the 12 by 12 Patterns and Solids. It's the purple. I really like this pattern. But I will cover the rest of this, but you might want to set that aside and reserve it if you want to do it the way I've designed it. You should have plenty. I had cut those strips and covered both sides, and I still have another full sheet of it left. So, which I will use in one way or another to cover the 4 inserts, which basically turns out to be, 8 sides, right? Okay, let's get our pages in. So again, I'm going to go over the order of the pages. So here's page 1. Here's page 2. Here is page 3. Sorry, it was turned sideways. 4, 5, page 6, 7, and 8. So I am going to install one of these, and then I'm going to let you guys do the other 3 on your own. I found that it's really a fussy process, and the more I feel so much pressure when I'm actually being videotaped. So I'll get one in, and then you guys will know what to do. And then I've got other videos where I've actually gone through the installation of every single page. But once you do one, you pretty much got it down. So the key to this is I leave the tape on both sides, and because it makes it easy to slip the pocket over it. Once you start taking the backing of the tape off, it starts grabbing, right? So I put it on with the backing on, and then I look at it. I lay it down both ways, and what I'm looking for is an even border on both sides, and I'm laying it down this way to do the same thing, because here's my chance to torque it before I take the backing off. Ideally, you get your spine in straight, and it wants to lay down straight on its own, but occasionally you put your hinge in, your spine hinge in, and it's slightly askew, and if you put your pages in straight to the hinge, they want to cascade either up or down. So this is your chance to try to straighten it on the spine, because you can't take the spine back out. But what you can do is put your page down slightly askew on the spine to correct for the mistake you made earlier. At any rate, this looks pretty good. It looks like I got my, I'm turning it so I can see both sides. It looks like I got my hinge in straight, which is what you're always shooting for, but that doesn't always happen. So say, for example, my spine was turned this way. In order to overcorrect, I might apply my page slightly askew to straighten it back out in the book. So that's what I'm checking for, and it looks good. So now I'm going to use this pick tool or weeding tool, depending on what you want to call it. And I'm going to reach in, and I'm going to grab the back of my tape out, and still while it's laying down, I'm going to lift my tape, and I'm holding the page with my right hand in place. And then once I get one side down, I don't really have to hold it anymore. I can pull this out on the other side, and it'll lay down straight. Somebody asked me about the Hidden Hinge Plus system, what my thoughts were on that. I have never used it. I've only used the Hidden Hinge, and I've not used it for 2 reasons. One, when I've seen it done, and I see the pages in the book, the pages look like they're moving around too much, and I worry that all that movement on that second score line is ultimately going to result in the hinge tearing. I don't know from practice whether or not that happens. I don't like that sort of sloppiness that happens. I do like the fact that your pages lay flat. So it's kind of a trade-off, one or the other. The other reason I don't use it is a patented process technique. And since I'm doing this for commercial purposes to generate sales in our store, I think I would have to have a commercial license to use it, and I'm just not going to invest in that. I'm not completely sold on it one way or the other because I haven't really tried it, but that's really why I don't use it. So I have neither good nor bad to say about it. So I do think that lots of people use it and swear by it. It's just not something I've decided to use. So, but I do like this process, but I can see the benefits of having your pages lay flat. But that's also one of the reasons why my albums are 4 pages. You start to get more than 4 pages and the pages don't, you get, your pages want to stand up like this, you know, even 6. So that's one of the other reasons why I stick with 4 pages, is to prevent some of that buildup. Okay, well, I said I was going to do one and then take off, but I've gone ahead and slid this one on. So I'm going to stop here. When we come back, we're going to start working on the cover. Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and we're back to continue working on the Fruit Flora. And I've made some progress while I was away. I did some planning on my cover, and this is what I've come up with. So I want to point out that this image here is part of the signature page in the collection pack. So it's part of the cut apart from the collection page. This is one of the cut aparts from the 8x8, and then and this is what it looks like in the Ephemera pack. So I wanted to use the smaller version that was too big to put here. So this is from the 8x8 cut apart, and then this last little piece, this lemon, comes from this Ephemera, and I just cut it out and then backed it with black cardstock. So I did that for both of these, and actually everything has a black mat behind it. And then I put some chipboard behind this to pop it. This also has some chipboard behind it. These I'm going to lay flat. So I started with what is a 7 3/4 by 7 3/4 piece of red designer paper, and then backed it with black cardstock. This is 8 by 8 3/8 by 8 3/8, so it's just a 6 or an 1/8 of an inch smaller than the size of the book itself. This is going to lay on top, and then these pieces are going to get clustered behind it. So I just want to kind of give you that run through real quick. I'm going to go ahead and put my flat pieces into place. I'm going to start by putting down the purple, and again, this is just an 1/8 inch shorter and narrower than the size of the book itself, so that I have my nice 1/16 inch border, which is consistent with the matting that you see inside the book as well. Okay, so what I'm planning on doing is going ahead and putting down the purple and the red, and then I'm going to go ahead and dress the spine in the back before I layer on the other pieces, just to minimize the wear and tear on the dimensional pieces. Okay, so that's in place. Okay, and for the, I'm going to go ahead and add the red, and then we'll flip it over and do the back. And the red is just, like I said, 7 3/4 by 7 3/4 with a small black mat all the way around it. This is just going to get adhered directly to this. And I tried it with just the purple, and there just wasn't enough dimension for me, so I added this additional layer. And I'm pretty happy. I love this cut apart. Oh, and by the way, I didn't point this out, but I fussy cut the pear out because there's 2 of each design. So I fussy cut the pear out, and it's popped. It's hard to see, I know, on the video, but it's very pretty in person. So the pear and its leaves are dimensional on top of the card. I'm just double checking to make sure I've got it right side up. It's probably something I should have done before I laid down the purple. All right, now I'm just trying to center this here. Got a little heavy-handed on the glue in that corner. Okay, there we go. That's looking good. I'm going to get the excess glue off and then flip it over here in just a second. I get one of my wipes, get the glue off my hand. I'm using art glitter glue, so it will dry clear, but I'd like to get the excess off anyway. So the back is going to be this purple, and I forgot I haven't trimmed it or inked it, so it's going to be just a second. Let me do that real quick. Let me find my... So I just took an 1/8 inch off height and width, so I've got my nice border. I started with an 8.5 by 8.5 and trimmed it down to 8 3/8 by 8 3/8. So I like the way my cover turned out, but I have to say, I originally wanted to go with the plaid. I really liked it, and then I did some searching around for content, and I saw that somebody else, namely Ginger Ropp, had already done one with the plaid being featured on the front. So I wanted to steer clear of her design and do something a little different. So you may want to consider looking at some of the other content. You may choose something different for the cover. I think I would have put the plaid somewhere on the cover if it hadn't already been done. But I've used it inside. Okay, so I'm just gonna... So I had to make sure I was putting it in right side up. Okay, there we go. Just gonna press that into place. Looks good. Okay, now I did use, oh, I don't know what I did with it. I set my spine aside. So I did, that is where I'm pulling in the plaid. Hopefully I didn't accidentally cut through it because I set it aside. But that's what I'm gonna put on my spine is this purple plaid. So I have to find it. And like I said, I hope I didn't cut through it on accident. Oh, that's a little bit disturbing. None of my other pieces are big enough. I have to look for it. I had it in a separate baggie earlier. Hopefully a little bit of housekeeping and it's going to pop up. But in the meantime, that is done. So this is from the cover signature page as well. So I cut this out and then I fussy cut it. And I was originally planning to put it on the cover, but it just looked too fussy with everything else that I was doing. So now my second plan is I'm going to apply this on the back of the book. I just think it's really pretty and it kind of breaks up all this purple. And the reason I'm pointing it out at the moment is if you like to apply ribbons to keep your books closed, I don't do that very often, but I do like the idea. You would want to, it would be a good idea to put the ribbon behind this cut apart. And I'm actually just backing it against the spine because it happened to be the edge of the design and it had a very flat edge. So I would just put it here, run my ribbon underneath it, have it come across, and then once I figure out what I'm doing here is probably place the adjoining ribbon underneath this piece here. So I'm still thinking I might do that. So I'm going to pause here for just a minute while I look for my spine and make a decision about that. I think one of the reasons I'm kind of pausing is the ribbon that I have is this green and I don't like the way it looks on the front. If it was a nice, rich, fat purple ribbon, it would be a no-brainer. So I'm going to look around and see if I've got some other ribbon in my stash that might work as well. So I'll be right back. All right, everybody, I'm back. I don't know what I did. I must have cut into the piece that I had planned for my spine. So I went ahead and trimmed out another piece. I'm just going to use this solid purple, which is going to go nice with the front and back. And I decided I'm going to attach some charms. So if you buy the bundle from us, as you know, or if you have in the past, we put in some charms that go with the collection. So in this case, I'm using a bee, some grapes, a grape leaf, and then this is just for my stash. In addition to that, there were some other charms, but I'm not going to feature them on the spine. I thought it might be too much weight. These may be the charms that you receive, but we may put alternates in there. It depends on how fast the bundles go and how many of the charms we get. And we've been having a real problem getting our supply out of China, as you can imagine, given all the other issues going on. Okay, as you recall, we put the cover and the second mat on, the back is on. Now we're ready to put our spine on. And right now I'm just going to lay this in and kind of eyeball where I want to put my charms. And I do have a tutorial for applying charms to your spine, but I'll go ahead and do most of it with you guys with me while we're working on this one as well. So I'm just trying to look and see how far down the charms are going to hang, get a visual, so that I can decide where I want to poke my hole. And it looks like that's about an inch down. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go a little bit more than an inch down. So now I'm going to lay it on its side. I'm going to use my owl, provided I can find it. And if not, I'll use my pick tool because it's sharp as well. You just need something sharp that you can poke a hole, and you're going to want to center it. So I'm going to go ahead and center. Actually, before I do that, let's double check and make sure that the width of the paper is right, because if I need to make it narrower, then it wouldn't be in the middle, would it? So that looks pretty good. And what I'm looking for is to make sure that the spine piece doesn't go over the bend here, because you'll just have a hard time keeping the edges down long term. And it's pretty close to the edge. So I think I am going to take a sliver off to make sure that it'll lay flat and not want to peel up on the side. And when I say sliver, I think I'm going to take off a 1/16 of an inch, which is not much. Okay, and then I'll need to ink that edge. And then once we get the spine on, we'll come back and do the front, and then I'm gonna call it done for the album. The rest of the embellishments I'll do offline, and you can see those in the walkthrough. And I'll go in and add some ephemera, some stickers, and some of the die cuts that come as part of the bundle collection. Okay, so I've slimmed it down, I've inked it, now I need to poke my hole, and I'm going to set my charms before I glue it down. Okay, I did find my owl. Okay, so I'm just poking a hole. You can do this with a hole punch too, but I like to keep it as small as possible. So I don't use a hole punch. The other reason I don't like to use a hole punch is a lot of times I'm trying to punch a hole in the middle of the page and they don't reach anyway. So it's always good to have one around. So this is a Tim Holtz jump ring, which is how I attach everything to the spine. You can poke a hole through the chipboard, but I honestly haven't found it to be necessary. So it seems like an awful lot of work with not a whole lot of reward. So I just put it behind the designer paper, I tape it into place, and then I glue the whole thing down. There's really not that much weight hanging on it, so I don't really feel like I need to go through the chipboard to support it, but I guess it really depends on how much weight you put on it, and I don't, so I think it's a preference. If you do decide you want to poke it through this chipboard, you're going to want to do that before you apply your hinge, so that when you put your hidden hinge in, it'll cover up the back of the brad, and you won't have to worry about it poking through in between your pages. Okay, so there, that's what it looks like. So I'm going to turn it around to its desired location. I want my ring to be down, not out like this. So I want it to lay down. So now that it's in that position, I'm going to get some tape on the back and tape these two prongs down so that they don't want to swirl around. As soon as I can get my eye on my tape again. I'm just using the fat tape to hold it in place. And then the rest of the spine itself is going to get glued down. Okay, that's in place. So now we'll get some glue on this and get it down, and then we'll come back and finish dressing the front of the album. Or most of it. I'll do some embellishing on my own as well. Sorry about that, my phone went off. I forgot to turn it off. So So there was a little pause. Anyways, I'm just getting some glue on the back of this spine piece, and I'm ready to set it into place. Just a caution, you may want to put extra glue on top of the tape itself because that's what's going to want to grab first. And I can see I've got it a little too high, so I'm going to reposition it. Try that one more time. Oh, and I got, darn it, I got glue on it. There we go. All right, hopefully that'll dry clear. It's art glitter, it's supposed to. Because of the lack of pattern here, though, it's likely to show up more than it would anywhere else. You can see I got a little bit of glue on it. I should have wiped my hands off before I started touching it. All right, it's in place. I'm going to burnish it. If those wind up showing, I'm going to be very disappointed, but hopefully it'll disappear as it dries. Burnish, burnish, burnish. There's our beautiful charms. And now let's go ahead and, I'm sorry, I'm still pushing this into place. I didn't get enough ink on my edge. I might come back with a Sharpie and cover that up. Okay, now let's get started on the cover. So I did look for some purple, dark purple ribbon in my stash. I didn't have any, so I'm going to go without the ribbon. But again, this is where you'd want to think about it because you'd probably want to put it under one of these two pieces. I would actually opt for this one, but it's really a personal preference. Okay, so again, this is a cut apart from the signature page of the collection. I've double cut it and fussy cut out the element here, so it's popped, and then I've also popped the back of this. I'm not planning on raising this. This is just going to be adhered flat to the red piece here. So now at the moment, all I'm doing is sort of shifting things around to figure out where I want them. I've got a couple of pieces of filigree that I can add. I don't think I like it all the way on the edge. If I do anything, it's probably going to be inset on the red. And honestly, it looks a little crowded here, so I don't like that. Leaning away from it. Let's try it down here on the yellow. See if I like it here. Better. Not so much. And then I've got this little piece that I fussy cut out. Again, this is from the 8x8 cut apart, and this is from this small ephemera card, and it's just the lemon that I've cut out and then backed with black cardstock. And that's how I came up with that. All right, I think this is what I'm gonna do. Not liking that. So the last place I would look for the companion is to be right here. And I think of all the placements, I like that the best. I just switched them. This one had a little bit more black on it than this, so I like that a little bit better. Okay, now I'm probably going to add a few more elements to the cover, but I'm not going to do it while we're recording. I'm going to add those elements offline. I might add some ribbon or, I don't know, some flat back pearls or something like that. But this is essentially what the design for the cover is going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these two pieces together. Okay, and then I think I'm ready to go ahead and add that. Now, you can see that I'm not completely covering the back, and part of the reason I don't is if I change my mind, I can lift it and it'll leave a smaller damaged spot. The other reason is, as I'm embellishing, I like to tuck elements under, and if the whole thing is glued down, I can't tuck it under anything. So I focus on just getting adhesive on the center part, and that way if I want to stash some ribbon or some pieces of foliage or something like that, I can actually get it underneath the chipboard without having to lift the glue. So that's the thought process there. And I can't remember where I picked that tip up from, but it was another crafter, I'm sure. Okay, I'm going to glue the filigree pieces down, but I'm not really worried about that right now because they take so long to dry. I think I'm going to set that aside, and we'll focus on getting these pieces down now. And again, in this case, I'm leaving myself about a 1/4 inch border. Oops, I got a little wide there. So that if I want to tuck something under, I can get underneath the chipboard and the cardstock without having to try to lift the paper. Okay, I'm pressing everything into place, especially with my hand behind it. And that is, like I said, the bulk of the design for the cover. And I will add some more elements to it, but I'm going to do that offline. So as usual, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and sharing your time with us here at Scrap and Create. We really appreciate it. If you like this, give us a thumbs up. And if you really like it, take the moment to share that. Send our link to somebody you know that likes to make mini albums. We have a store, and we carry all the Graphic 45 collections. We're also carry most, if not all, of the Ciao Bella and Stamperia. Those are our 3 signature lines, and if it's something you want from those lines, I'm sure we have it. So take a look at our shop at www.scrapandcreate.com. We really appreciate it. All of our tutorials are free. It's meant to, encourage you guys to come to our shop. You don't have to shop there, but we appreciate it when you do. So thanks again for tuning in. This is Daphne from Scrap and Create. You guys have a good night. Bye.